Hi, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about something that I've been thinking about today a lot as a result of a conversation that I've been having in the comments section of one of my videos. And in this conversation, different possible methods of knowing the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon specifically, but also just parts of the church in general, have been brought up. And this has caused me to reflect and to think about what I believe now, and particularly if there is anything that could possibly happen to me that would get me to change my mind about the church based on how I feel right now. And I thought about it, and I thought that it was worth reflecting on and worth talking about. So here I am to share what I think might cause me to change my mind about the church going forward and how. So, first of all, at this point in time, my belief not only in the reliability of the church, the Mormon church specifically, but also in the reliability of the Bible and even of God in general is completely shattered. I have no active belief in God at all anymore. And this is because I know that if there is a God, then that God allowed me to think I was receiving messages from him, her, them, or it when I really wasn't. And that makes me inclined to not trust any information that I think might be coming from God as coming from God. I'm inclined not to trust that because I have been not exactly fooled before in all cases, but certainly led to believe that I was experiencing certain things that were good when I wasn't. And so if I were to develop a testimony of anything in the Mormon church at all, I would have to start from the ground up. And I would have to know that the method by which I was gaining a testimony was completely different or significantly different than any method that I had ever used before to gain or to try to hold on to a testimony, because those methods were unreliable. So, what could happen to me that would cause me to gain a testimony? Well, first of all, let me focus on what could happen through personal revelation, because that is the thing that I discussed with the commenter in my YouTube comments. There are multiple ways in which people can supposedly receive revelation. They can receive it through thoughts, feelings, or, as this commenter later pointed out, visions, dreams, and angels. So, what would happen if I got random thoughts and feelings that seemed to support that the church was true? Well, my first instinct would be to think that that was just my brain regurgitating stuff that it had heard before, right? What about dreams? Well, I haven't really had a dream that seemed to support the truthfulness of the church, but again, same thing. It wouldn't surprise me that much to have one, and it wouldn't really convince me that the church was true. As for visions, I have had experiences when I was extremely manic of having what I thought were visions and then finding out that they weren't. So, depending on what the vision was like, what the visionary experience was like, that would just tell me that there was probably something off with my meds at this point. Um, and as for seeing an angel, That would be a bit different than anything that has ever happened to me before, but given all my other experiences, I hope that one of the first things I would think if an angel were to appear to me was, "Oh no, am I crazier than I thought I was?" Because I just don't have a track record of reliability when it comes to communications that I think are from God. So, what would really help more than the method of the communication to convince me that this communication might be reliable and might be from some source other than my bipolar brain would be if it contained predictive power. What I mean by this is, for example, say I was having a dream, and in the dream I was told, tomorrow this, and this will happen. And it was something that I couldn't make happen myself. It was something that I couldn't have known. And then the next day, all of those things happened. That would go a long way towards convincing me that I was receiving communication, if not from God, then at least from some being who knew a lot more than I did. And another thing that would help me a lot to believe that this was actually from somebody else and not just my brain would be if this happened over and over and over again. So I started to develop trust in the pattern of what was going on. Another thing that would help is if I was told something would happen, then talked about my dream to someone else before that thing happened, and then that thing happened, and the other person saw that that thing happened after I'd talked to them about it and knew that I had somehow been told about it before it happened. Especially if I did this over and over again and this other person was in on it. Because then it wouldn't just be me worrying about whether I could trust my own memories. I'd actually know I could confirm as often as I wanted with the other person. Did this really happen? Yes, this really happened. No, I'm not making this all up. So that would really help a lot too. But would that tell me that the LDS church specifically was true? Well, no. It wouldn't even tell me that the being I was communicating with was God in the sense of being all powerful, all loving, all knowing, and involved in everybody's lives. It would just tell me that it was some being that knew more than I did. So, how would I potentially know more about this being? Well, this being could tell me what he, she, it, or they wanted by telling me, if you do X, Y, or Z tomorrow, this good thing will happen to you. And if you don't, this won't happen, or this other bad thing will happen to you. And then I could experiment by sometimes doing what this being wanted and sometimes not, and seeing how that played out and whether I could trust that being to inform me correctly of the results of my decisions. And that would be very helpful. But that would just tell me what the being wanted me to do. It wouldn't tell me why. It wouldn't tell me necessarily that that was being told to me in a context of love. Although I think over time I would begin to develop a trust for this being if it never lied to me, and assume that if it was telling me things, it was telling me things through at least not bad intentions. So I guess I would begin to develop a belief that this being cared about me in some way. What wouldn't help me develop a belief in that this being loved me was just feeling some random feeling of all-consuming love at some point and not knowing why, or feeling a feeling of all-consuming love um, after praying, for example, without any other context, because I have felt like I was feeling God's love before and come away from that now feeling like I don't know if I can trust that came from anything at all but me. And so I would have to have something a little bit more concrete than just feelings in order to base my opinions of this being on. But let's say that all of that happened. Now I know that the being wants me to do certain things and not others. Well, the being could say that he, she, it, or they wanted me to go to church, wanted me to go back to the Mormon church. And then I'd start to have some serious difficulties and questions because I don't trust the LDS church anymore. I don't trust it because leaders have said things in the past in that church that have contradicted other leaders, and because they've said things and are saying things that I currently disagree with. So, in order for me to feel comfortable within the LDS church, everything that I don't like about it would either have to change or I would have to come to peace with it. I would have to come to believe that it's true. I would have to develop confidence that whatever the leaders are currently teaching in the church is actually the truth. And that's not easy when what leaders have taught in the past contradicts with what other leaders have taught in the past and so forth. It's not an easy thing to do, to develop confidence in the current leaders in that situation. So, what could help me develop trust in what the leaders of the church are currently teaching? Well, there are a couple of things. Um, One is if the prophet actually started to prophesy and those prophecies began to come true. Then I would know that he's also receiving communication from this being or some other being that wants him to know certain things that are actually true. And that would go a long way to me developing confidence, at least in that. But like I said, with all the weirdness that's gone on in the past in the church, that wouldn't really be enough for me to feel completely good about going back to church. I might still go back to church if I knew that that was what the being communicated with me wanted me to do, but I definitely have issues. I definitely would be concerned, and I don't think I'd feel comfortable at church necessarily, given what I know now about the history of the church. So, what could help resolve that? Well, the church could either reverse its position on several key issues for me, or I could start getting evidence that all the evidence against the church's position on those issues was actually wrong. And there's more evidence coming in that reverses my position on those issues. For example, the Book of Mormon. If the Book of Mormon was literally true, and suddenly they found evidence of a civilization or the set of civilizations within the Book of Mormon that had all the things that Joseph Smith said existed in the Americas prior to Columbus, right there in the same location, and something like that were to happen, and also they found civilizations wiped out, and they discovered through analyzing the fossils or whatever preserved remains that there was a group at some point with Israelite DNA. Well, that would go a long way towards changing my mind about the Book of Mormon. I still have a lot of questions, but that would definitely make a difference for me. And so, but that would have to happen on so many different issues. Because here's the thing, I couldn't just chain my testimony the way the church taught me to do when I was younger. Because when I was younger, the church taught me all you have to do is know that the Book of Mormon is true. Pray, get a testimony of the Book of Mormon through what? Probably through your thoughts or feelings. Get a testimony of the Book of Mormon through your thoughts or feelings. And these good thoughts and feelings that you have about the Book of Mormon will tell you that it's true. And then because the Book of Mormon is true, that means everything else the church is saying to you right now is true. Except the problem is that doesn't follow. Because Joseph Smith wrote the Book of Mormon, and then there are quite a few different churches that believe in the Book of Mormon, but don't believe in the current leadership of the LDS Church. And so there's plenty of ways to come to the conclusion that the Book of Mormon is true, but other things aren't, first of all. And second of all, just because you have a good feeling or a good thought about the Book of Mormon does not mean that everything in the Book of Mormon is true. It can mean that there was something in the Book of Mormon that really resonated with you, and maybe that thing in the Book of Mormon was good. But in my opinion, there are both good and bad things in the Book of Mormon. The book as a whole is not a 100% good book. And I would have to find a way to come to terms with that. With the racial issues. I would either have to be convinced that the Book of Mormon is right, that somehow dark skin is a curse from God, or I would have to have it explained to me why it was that God allowed people to think that for so long, due in part to this book that's supposed to be from Him. I would have to understand that in order to be completely at peace with the Book of Mormon, because right now, I'm not at peace with that at all. That really bothers me. And so it's just things like that would have to be resolved in order for me to feel really comfortable being back at church, even if I knew that there was some sort of higher power that wanted me there. So those are my thoughts on what might make me change my mind about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Hopefully you found this interesting. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Is there anything that would make you change your mind about whether the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is true? Also, if you like this video, please like it and consider subscribing. And I'll see you all next time. Bye.